What's today?
All right, young scholars. So, for those of you that have not submitted App 1 yet, make sure that you go ahead and do that, like I said, by tomorrow. This weekend, you have homework assignment number 3 to do, where you're asked to provide a 1-paragraph response. Think of an app you use frequently. It doesn't have to be the favorite app you used before. And describe how or what you would do to improve that type of app. So that's homework number 3. That's due Sunday night. So all of these homework assignments, if you look through the rest of the semester on Blackboard there, they were all similar to this. You know, how do you improve an app? How would you market an app? They're all geared towards having you think about the kind of app you might want to build for your group project. So I think Kesney did them all already. Like I said, you're more than welcome to do them all ahead of time and get the credit now. Why not? This way it's done and over with. You get the 18% of your final grade for doing all of the homework assignments. This way it gives you more time to work on the app assignments and the group project. So again, if you did not complete app number 1 when it was due Sunday, make sure to get it to me by tomorrow when the progress reports are due. And for this weekend, as I mentioned, homework assignment number 3, due on Sunday. Describe an app and how you would improve it. Okay, so today we're going to go through the most basic app humanly possible, where it's just going to be a greeting display. And then next week, we'll jump into some more advanced ways of doing things. And there'll be no homework assignment next week, so I'm sure everybody will enjoy that after having one back-to-back weeks. Okay, so go ahead and open your Android Studio. And create new project. For our purposes, you always want to do phone and tablet and empty activity. And then when you click next, we're going to name this new app we're creating greeting card. And for your minimum SDK, you want to change it to API 24 NuGet. And make sure it's 24, because API 25 is also called NuGet. And we can keep the Kotlin DSL recommendation as it is. So name, greeting card, minimum SDK, API 24. And once you've done so, you'll click Finish. And your app will start building on the left-hand side. And I'll put that in the Zoom chat just so everybody sees in case I went too quick. So when you create your new project, the app name should be greeting card, and the minimum SDK should be API 24 Nougat Android 7.0. And you'll notice here, it takes a while to build your app. Once it finally starts building,
Hey,
your
Professor?
files. Yes,
Yeah, I'm sorry. Where did we get greeting card? I didn't see that.
we're just creating a new project.
Oh, it's like a new, okay. I
Yep.
thought it was something we had to download.
No. So create new project, call it greeting card, and set the minimum SDK to API 24. And you'll notice once it's built, all those same files that I've pointed out to you in previous days pop up on the left-hand side here. We're creating a new project, Felix. Just do the empty activity and call the project greeting card with the minimum SDK of API 24. And once everything is loaded, it should open your main activity file. And it might say import ... If you click the ... it expands out all of the imports, just like you would see in a Java program. These are all of the different imports required for us to create a greeting card. So give a heads up in the chat once you have everything loaded up. Once you're done building and your main activity file opens, you'll see that there's a bunch of code here. And you see that's because we have the code option selected. If you switch over to the design view, it'll show you a successful build is needed before the preview can be displayed. So if everything's built already and your main activity file can open, go ahead and click design and then select this build and refresh option. I'm going to wait until everybody is caught up. So again, when it opens, it's going to open with all the code displayed in code mode. Switch off into design mode and select build and refresh. And once you do that and you're in design view, it will now show you a message that pops up from the app that we're creating. I think it says welcome Android. So I've gone ahead and clicked build and refresh. You see it's building again down the bottom. Now it's initializing the preview of the app we've created. So now it just says, hello, Android. So again, once your project builds, you'll see all the files here on the side. It'll open code by default. You'll switch over to design. There'll be something here that says build and refresh. You click on that. You'll have the status bar down the bottom here. And once it refreshes the build, you'll have the display hello Android here. So again, like I said in the chat, let us know once you get that code open, and then you could switch to design. In case I've gone too quickly. Chris, it's all loaded.
Wait, what'd you say? My fault.
It's all loaded. You got to this screen.
Yes.
Okay. Naya, Lana, Kesney, Kai, Felix, you're all up at this screen here. Okay, good. So Felix, when it first opens, it's going to open in this code mode. You select design mode, and then there'll be something here that says build and refresh. You click on that, and down the bottom here, it'll have the refreshing. And then once it refreshes, it'll now display our preview screen. So by default, it always opens your, whether it's Java or KT stands for Kotlin. Then you switch off to design mode. Click that button that says build and refresh. Once it builds and refreshes, it gives us this hello Android greeting. So once Felix is done refreshing and gets the preview, we're going to go into our code and change this preview. We'll also, instead of having this weird looking black background, we're also going to create a colored background behind it and add padding. Who knows what padding is? Have any of you like built websites or anything?
Padding is basically spacing.
Yeah, basically. By default, in programming, you would set top and bottom padding first and then left and right padding. In this example, we're just going to do the top and bottom padding. So it creates a little bit of space in between your text and border based on how much or how big you make the padding. So Felix, did that build and refresh and you got the preview now?
I'm still looking for it. I don't know where it is specifically because when you were explaining it, I was still in chat.
Okay. So when you open up your project, it's just going to open up the code automatically, right? So this is where you're at. There's 3 buttons here: code, split, design. So you want to click on the design button. And right here, it'll say the words build and refresh. And you want to click on that. And then it refreshes down the bottom here. You'll see the status bar. Once it's done refreshing, you'll get the new preview screen. And it should say hello Android by default.
Oh, so on my screen, I don't have code split or design.
Do you have the main activity opened? This file here?
Yes.
And there's no code split design here below it.
No.
Okay. So go to view, appearance, and make sure all of these are checked. Main menu, navigation bar, tool window bar, status bar, members and navigation bar.
Okay.
The main menu, navigation bar, tool windows bar, status bar, and members and navigation. And then you'd select design mode, click build and refresh. And once it's done refreshing, the greeting hello Android pops up. So while we're waiting for Felix to pop up, how do we know where the hello Android comes from? Well, obviously it has to come from this code we've created, right? So the Android part comes from, we've created two instances of greeting. We've called it name. So it's basically similar to if you had string name equals Android. Does that make sense? So we have this instance here, greeting name equals Android. We're implementing it in the preview below here as well. But the reason it says hello Android is because we've created a class or method to display text equals hello $name exclamation point. So it takes that variable name, Android, and puts it there. So now it's hello Android exclamation point. That's what we're going to modify today. So in both instances where it says greeting name Android, go ahead and change that to your name. So now in both instances where it had Android, in quotes, now I put my name. You do the same. So when you switch back to design view, it's going to refresh the preview. And once it loads, it'll say, hello, your name. See? So again, in the code where it said Android in quotes for the variable name, in both instances, you change it to your own name. If you don't do it in both instances, it's not going to update. And then when you click in design view, it'll update hello, whatever name you put in. Naya, Kesney, Lana, etc. So Felix, you now have all these three preview options.
No, my computer's lagging a little bit.
Okay,
Never mind, I found them.
okay. So you want to go to this design view and click build and refresh in order to get the preview. Yours will say hello Android because you haven't changed the name variable just yet. So again, where it had greeting name Android in both instances, change Android to your name. So this way it says hello. And then when you go into design view and update the preview, it now says hello, your name. But that's kind of boring, right? Hello is kind of just a boring greeting, right? So let's change our text hello to Professor Marino welcomes young scholar. And Zaza, what's going to happen now when I go into design?
You said what's gonna happen. From what I'm seeing, it's not gonna update anything because it's not in the preview. Hello?
So it didn't update? When you went into design view, it didn't update this in the preview?
Well, it did for me when I did the greeting preview. It did for me, but I didn't add in the text as yet
Okay.
in the composable.
So when you go back into design view, it should refresh to now say Professor Marino welcomes young scholar and then your name.
Okay.
The only area we need to edit the text is within the fun greeting method.
Yeah, I didn't add text there.
Okay. So right here, this area where I've highlighted just said hello before. So whatever message you change that to, you know, in my instance, I did Professor Marino welcomes young scholar and then left that variable name, which you changed in the instance above and the instance below to your name. So then once you switch back into design view, you'll have the little status refreshing down here. Once it refreshes, it now gives you the new preview window.
I got it now. I just had the previous greeting with Azaria. Like I made it my name, but now I have the text.
Okay. So as I mentioned, the only instance you want to change that text is right where I've highlighted here, where it said hello previous. Whereas the name variable was being changed 2 times because it's being used twice. If you only change the name variable once, it's not necessarily going to change the variable display itself. Again, when you switch into design view, it'll now show you your updated text and variable. What do you notice is the default for the color scheme here?
It's like defaulted to like a grayish blackish.
Yeah. It's like a blackish text, white background, basic, right? So what we're going to do next is change that. So since some of you mentioned that you have Macs, there's two ways to do what I'm about to do. If you have a Windows PC or laptop, you're going to use the Alt and Enter button at the same time. If you have a Mac, you're going to use the Options and Enter button selected at the same time. So you're going to click this word that says text in green, yellow color here under the fun greeting method. And since I have a PC, I'm going to do Alt and Enter at the same time. Like I said, if you're on a Mac, you're going to do Options and Enter at the same time. And you'll have these pop-ups come up. We're going to do Surround with Widget. Which is basically going to give us the option to change that white box around our text. So everybody got this to come up, hopefully? Like I said, Alt and Enter at the same time if you're on a Windows. Options and Enter at the same time if you're on a Mac. So once you select Surround with Widget, you have three options: Surround with Container, Surround with Row, Surround with Column. We're going to select Surround with Container. And by default, it's going to change that text to box once you select it. So it's now put the text inside a box. However, boxes are kind of boring. So we're going to change that to surface. So once you've done that, surround with widget and then surround with container, you have this box just showing up here. Everybody's at that point, hopefully. We now
Actually,
change.
Professor, could you go over how did you get the option to pop up? Because I think it's different for me on a Mac.
Right, so click where it says text and select the options button and the enter button. And it should have that pop-up that says surround with widget.
So options didn't come for me, but when I clicked on it, like I had to look for, there's like a light bulb by the left-hand side, and then I see that option.
Okay. So do surround with widget and then surround with container. And here the word box will show up. And instead of box, we change it to surface, parenthesis, parenthesis.
Okay, another issue. So surrounded widget did come up. However, underneath that, surround with container does not come up.
Does it have surround with row, surround with column?
Let me see. So it has, so it just has surround and then edit intention settings or assign shortcut.
Okay, just do surround then. And it should say box. Who else has a Mac? Nobody? Interesting. So where it said box, you change that to surface, parentheses, parentheses. You could technically type it in yourself if you so choose. Surface, parentheses, parentheses, bracket, and then close the bracket on line 40. So within that parentheses, we're going to set the color of that box or surface we're creating around our text. So we need to do color equals color. But in our first instance, it's lowercase. And in our second instance, the color is uppercase. You'll notice here, when you do it in uppercase, you have a bunch of options here. So you're going to pick whatever your color of choice might be. So I might use black because that's my favorite. If you put a dot after the color, an entire list of colors will show up that you can use. Blue, black, cyan, gray, dark gray, green, light gray, magenta, red. Whatever specific color you'd prefer to use, that would be what you'd select. So as I mentioned, I'm going to select blue because that's my favorite color. You can do red, gray, whatever color of your choice you so choose. Then once you've done all that and go back into your design mode, it refreshes down at the bottom here again. And it's now made my service or box background blue. Little hard to read with the black text, right? So maybe I'll go back in and change it to red. And then when I go back to design again, it refreshes the preview again. And now this time our surface or box the background is red with the same default black text. It's a little easier to read. So whatever color you so choose to use, red, blue, cyan. What's the only color I wouldn't recommend using?
Black.
Black.
Black. Your text is black. You make the background black. You're not going to see the text. Next, we're going to add some padding in between our surface and the text itself. So you notice right here, there's very little space from the top of the P, the bottom of the P on each line between the top of the surface or box and the text itself. Padding makes that space a little bigger. This way, it's nestled nice and neat and easier to see. So in order to add padding, we have to do two things. First, we set up the padding itself, and then we have to add some imports in order for Android Studio to understand what padding is. So we have this line here, modifier equals modifier. After the second modifier is where we're going to add our padding. So we do dot padding. And you'll see this option comes up with the parentheses, all DP. That's what we end up adding. So within our parentheses, we would do a number dot DP. But you notice that that's in red. Android Studio doesn't understand this right now because we haven't imported the classes associated with padding. So I use the number 24 in this example to show you the larger the number, the bigger the padding, the bigger the space. So once we've imported the two imports we need for padding, Android Studio will accept this. It'll no longer be in red. So everybody's with me? After the second modifier, dot padding, parentheses, 24.dp. So now we have to scroll up to our import list and add two more imports. So our first import teaches, and make sure you spell Android X correctly, or else that'll show up in red. So this Android X compose.ui.unit.dp now teaches Android Studio what DP is. So you scroll back down, and now DP is no longer in red, but padding is still in red because we need to import the padding class next. So that line, import Android X.compose.ui.unit.dp, now teaches Android Studio what the DP unit is. The next import we have to add import Android X dot compose dot foundation dot layout dot padding now tells Android Studio what padding is. So you scroll down, padding is no longer in red. So these last two imports here tell Android Studio what the display pixels are and the padding is. If you did not import those, there's another way you could technically do that. If I can find it. There's supposed to be an option. Here it is. Optimize imports under code, where if you put in that padding and DP and selected that, it would automatically add your two new imports in order for your code to run properly. So again, the first one allows us to use the display pixels. The second one allows us to use padding. So now padding 24.dp shows up completely fine instead of with red text telling us that it's a problem. So when you switch back into design mode, you see the padding is pretty much the same. Once it refreshes, you see the padding is much bigger. It's now 24. In Android Studio, by default, it does the same for all four sides: top, bottom, left, right. As I mentioned before, in web development, your first number would usually just be the default for top and bottom. So if I make this 24 bigger, let's say 56, and now go back and refresh, our padding, excuse me, is that much bigger. If we make it lower than 24, let's say 12, and go back to design view with the refresh, there isn't really that much padding. It's just a little more space than the initial default. So generally, with padding, you want to make it a little bigger. I set it back to 56. Especially if this is going to be the only thing that shows up on your screen. You want to have it smack dab in the middle as an example. So the more padding, the more likely it is that everything's going to be centered. So your preview might only be on one line. In my preview, it's on 2 lines because I welcome myself. So again, our DP is to display pixels. We needed that new import. For the padding, we needed that new import. As I mentioned, I'm going to go ahead and delete that to show you. The items are in red. Android Studio doesn't understand. You can go to code and then optimize imports. It should have added those 2 imports. However, it looks like it just deleted one of ours. So that's not good. Which means I would have to go back in and type 2 new imports myself. Just like you did initially. And as mentioned, the first one allows us to use that display pixels moniker. The second one allows us to display padding. Once you put them in, the text is now normal colors scheme instead of red, telling us there's no problem. So is there any questions on that? Does anybody want me to go through that again? No, everybody's good? Okay, so that's all I had for us to go through today. As I mentioned, homework assignment 3 is due Sunday night. Or you're thinking of an app you use frequently, doesn't have to be your favorite app. Just write a paragraph response describing how or what you would do to improve the app. As I mentioned, all of those homework assignments are pretty simple to complete. The next one is due in 2 weeks. Homework assignment 4. Same kind of setup. Which app store do you prefer? Google Play, Apple Store, etc. Amazon now has an app store. Microsoft is coming out with an app store. So even though they're not due just yet, they're simple enough to complete. You might want to go through the rest of them and complete them all just to get them out of the way. But again, assignment 3 is the one due on Sunday. Again, those of you that did not complete app number 1 in time for Sunday, that was the simple thing where we just edited the activity main.xml for easy recipes with the directions and ingredients. And you just submitted your updated code from the activity main.xml and a screenshot of what came up in the emulator that changed it. So I think there were 4 or 5 of you that said that you thought that the project app was due, and so you didn't get a chance to work on that. So again, like I said, make sure you do it by tomorrow. Email it to me. So this way I can give you credit for it. Right now on Blackboard, it probably says you have a 0 for it because you didn't submit it. And that's the Blackboard default. So if there are no other questions, I will see all of you on Monday. except for the two in programming 2. I'll see you tomorrow. Were you able to get at least the build up, Felix? If so,
No.
if so, you
It's still loading.
it's still loading the build
Yeah.
off
At
here
first
on
I
the
had-
left. It never came up.
It did. It came up design. So then when I tried to design it, it had to load. Then when it finished loading, I had to refresh and build it,
Okay.
which is another load itself.
Okay. So what I recommend is see how I don't have very much open otherwise.
Yeah, this is the only one opened on my laptop right now.
Okay. So like I said, this uses a lot of resources. So the less you have open, the better. You could always check into like your folders and delete any extra stuff you might have that you don't need, or put it on an external hard drive or USB. This way it might run a little faster. But like I
Okay.
said, you could always go back and watch the video to make sure that you have everything on the up and up.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Okay, you too.